8 French journalists, 3 American anthropologists, and countless intelligence agents had attempted to enter Tiena Village within Burkina Faso's borders. None returned. 2 weeks ago, President Ibrahim Traore refused even his guards and entered this village alone. Everyone expected his death. 72 hours later, Traore returned, carrying information that would forever change Africa's destiny. The helicopter blade slowed to a stop on the presidential landing pad in Ouagadougou. Ministers, generals, and security personnel stood in a tense semicircle, waiting. It had been 72 hours since President Ibrahim Traore had disappeared, officially on a personal retreat. But rumors had spread like wildfire. The presidential helicopter had been spotted heading toward the northern border region, toward the forbidden zone that even military maps marked simply as contested territory. Defense Minister Konate checked his watch for the 5th time in as many minutes. "There's still no communication from the president's satellite phone," he muttered to Foreign Minister Dio. "If he doesn't return within the hour, we need to implement contingency protocols." Dio nodded grimly. Constitutional provisions for temporary leadership were clear, but the power vacuum created by Traore's permanent absence would be catastrophic for the fragile stability they had worked so hard to achieve. As anxiety mounted, a small dot appeared on the horizon. The gathered officials squinted against the setting sun. "Aircraft approaching from the north," announced the air control officer through Konate's earpiece. "Unscheduled signature matches the presidential helicopter." Relief swept through the assembly, replaced almost immediately by new tension. If Traore was returning from where they suspected, what would he bring back with him? The helicopter touched down, dust swirling around its skids. For several long seconds, nothing happened. Then the door slid open, and Ibrahim Traore emerged, looking remarkably unharmed. He wore simple civilian clothes, khaki pants, a plain, button-down shirt, not the military uniform he typically favored for official functions. He carried a small leather satchel close to his body, one hand protectively covering it. "Mr. President," Konate broke protocol, stepping forward before the security team had completed their standard procedures. "We've been concerned. Your communication blackout was unexpected." Traore surveyed the gathered officials, his expression unreadable. "Assemble the High Council immediately," he said, his voice quiet but commanding. "No staff, no assistants, no recording devices, only the 12 council members." He strode past them toward the presidential palace, leaving confused glances in his wake. 90 minutes later, in the secure conference room deep within the palace complex, Traore sat at the head of the ancient wooden table that had served Burkina Faso's leaders since independence. The 12 members of the High Council, a mix of military officials, tribal elders, and civilian ministers, watched him with a combination of concern and curiosity. Traore had said nothing since entering, methodically checking the room for surveillance devices despite the regular sweeps conducted by security. Finally satisfied, he placed his leather satchel on the table. "What I'm about to share cannot leave this room," he began, his gaze intense. "Not until we decide collectively how to proceed." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "I have returned from Tiena Village." A shocked murmur ran through the room. Elder Wedriogo, the oldest council member, visibly paled. "Tiena? No outsider has ever—" "I know," Traore cut him off. "But circumstances required direct intervention. The stories we've heard about Tiena all these years, they're both true and untrue." Minister Zongo leaned forward. "Mr. President, with respect, that village has swallowed every foreigner who's attempted entry since colonial times. How did you gain access? And why take such a risk personally?" The question hung in the air, giving voice to what everyone wanted to know. Traore's expression softened slightly. "My grandmother was born there," he said simply, surprising the council members. This was not information included in his official biography. "I was not entering as a foreigner, but returning as a son of Tiena." He opened the satchel, removing what appeared to be an ancient leather-bound book and several sealed tubes containing rolled documents. What I found there will require us to reconsider everything we thought we knew about our nation's resources, our history, and our future. In a secure international facility outside Geneva, Clara Russo reviewed satellite imagery with growing frustration. As head of the West African Monitoring Division for the Global Resources Initiative, a multinational corporate consortium with significant mining interests throughout the Sahel, she had been tracking anomalies in the northern region of Burkina Faso for months. "Run the thermal imaging analysis again," she instructed her technical team. "Focus on this 20-kilometer radius." The massive screen refreshed, displaying heat signatures across the target area. "There's definitely something there," confirmed the lead technician, pointing to an unusual pattern consistent with underground thermal activity. "Could be geothermal, could be mineral processing." Clara frowned. The area in question was officially designated as uninhabitable, a mix of rocky outcroppings and dense forests that geological surveys had dismissed as economically worthless decades ago. "What about population signatures?" she asked. The technician shook his head. "That's where it gets strange. We're detecting complex infrastructure, but minimal heat signatures from human presence. Almost as if they're shielding themselves from detection," Clara finished. She pulled up a historical file on her tablet. According to colonial records, there was supposed to be a village in this region. Tiena. French expeditions in the 1930s tried to establish contact, but none returned. The message was brief but alarming. Traore returned from northern expedition. Emergency High Council meeting in progress. Unusual security protocols. Clara's pulse quickened. Ibrahim Traore had been a problem since taking power, his nationalist policies threatening foreign mining interests, his military background making him resistant to the usual pressures. If he had discovered whatever was hidden in that region, she made a decision. "Contact Paris. We need to activate our contingency asset in Ouagadougou immediately." As her subordinate hurried to comply, Clara stared at the mysterious heat patterns on the screen. After centuries of being dismissed as superstition, the secret of Tiena Village might finally be exposed, with potentially billions of dollars in consequences. Back in the presidential palace, Traore spread ancient maps across the council table. They showed the region around Tiena in extraordinary detail: river systems, elevation changes, geological formations, with precision that modern satellite imaging had only recently achieved. "These maps date back over 400 years, Traore explained. "They've been maintained and updated by Tiena's custodians for generations, documenting changes in the landscape that modern science is only beginning to understand." "Custodians?" asked Defense Minister Kanit skeptically. "You mean villagers?" Traore shook his head. "Tiena is not just a village. It's an institution, a living repository of knowledge that predates European contact with Africa. The people there are not isolated by accident or superstition. They've deliberately maintained their separation to protect what they safeguard." He pointed to specific markings on the map, symbols unlike any writing system the council members recognized. These indicate mineral deposits: gold, copper, lithium. But this, he indicated a series of concentric circles in a region about 30 kilometers from Tiena itself. This is what they've been protecting for centuries, what colonial powers suspected but could never confirm. Foreign Minister Dio leaned closer, studying the markings. "What is it?" Traore's expression was solemn. "The largest untapped rare earth element deposit in the world. Concentrated, pure, and accessible enough to supply global technology needs for at least a century." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Rare earth elements were the lifeblood of modern technology. Everything from smartphones to missile guidance systems depended on them. Currently, over 80% of the global supply was controlled by China, creating precarious dependencies for Western economies. "If this information is accurate," Finance Minister Ouedraogo began, his voice strained. "If it's accurate," Traore confirmed, It would make Burkina Faso one of the most strategically important nations on earth, more valuable than Saudi Arabia was during the peak of oil dependence. Elder Sono, who had remained silent until now, spoke in his weathered voice. And this is why Tiena has remained hidden. They understood that such wealth would bring not prosperity, but conquest. Traore nodded. For centuries they've maintained their isolation, allowing rumors of curses and disappearances to protect them from outside interest. But the elders of Tiena believe the time has come for revelation. He paused, letting his gaze move around the table. They've watched our government since independence. They've seen governments come and go, some corrupt, some well-intentioned, all ultimately influenced by foreign powers. They believe our administration might be the first truly capable of using this resource for the benefit of our people. Defense Minister Konate, ever practical, leaned forward. The moment this information becomes public, we'll face overwhelming pressure from every direction. China, Russia, the United States, the EU. All will suddenly discover intense interest in our welfare, not to mention the private corporations that will deploy every tool in their considerable arsenals to gain control. His expression darkened. Including destabilization, if necessary. Which is why nothing leaves this room until we have established an unassailable position, Traore. Confirmed. He produced another document from his satchel, newer, bearing the official seal of the Burkina Faso government. This is a presidential decree, prepared but not yet signed, declaring the entire northern region a national strategic resource zone under direct military protection. No foreign access, no private development, no international observation, until our position is secure. The council members exchanged glances. Such a move would be unprecedented and would immediately trigger international suspicion. We'll need allies, said Foreign Minister Dio cautiously. Strong ones, Traore nodded. The elders of Tiena have provided not just information, but a strategy, developed over generations of observation and analysis. They believe we have a narrow window of opportunity to secure Burkina Faso's future, but we must move with both speed and absolute discretion. In the upscale Ouaga 2000 district of Ouagadougou, Colonel Philippe Marchand received an encrypted message on his personal device. Officially, he served as a military attaché at the French embassy, focusing on regional security cooperation. Unofficially, his role was considerably more complex, maintaining French intelligence networks throughout the country, protecting French corporate interests, and, when necessary, influencing local political developments. The message was brief. Unusual activity at Presidential Palace. High Council meeting without staff. Traore recently returned from Northern Restricted Zone. Assess and report. Marchand frowned. The Northern Zone had been of particular interest to French intelligence for decades, though previous efforts to penetrate it had ended in disappearance or disaster. If Traore had somehow accessed Tiena Village and returned alive, something significant had changed. He activated his secure communication channel to the French intelligence headquarters in Paris. Request immediate satellite surveillance of Northern T, Quadrant B7. Any unusual movement, energy signatures, or communications. As he awaited confirmation, Marchand reviewed his assets within the presidential security apparatus. His highest-placed source had been silent for 3 days, concerning but not yet alarming, given the irregular communication protocols they maintained for safety. His device buzzed with a response from Paris. Satellite repositioning underway. Be advised, American, Chinese, and Russian intelligence showing increased activity in your region. Additional resources dispatched to support. Marchand's concern deepened. If multiple global powers were suddenly focusing on Burkina Faso, the situation was escalating faster than anticipated. He needed information, quickly. Dawn broke over Ouagadougou as the High Council meeting finally concluded. 12 hours of intense discussion had produced a strategy, audacious in both its ambition and its calculated risk. Council members departed individually at irregular intervals to avoid drawing attention to the unusual length of their gathering. Traore remained in the conference room, reviewing the documents spread across the table one final time before returning them to his satchel. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. His head of security, Major Sankara, entered after Traore's acknowledgement. "Sir, satellite activity over our territory has increased by 300% in the past 6 hours. American, Chinese, French, and Russian surveillance platforms have all adjusted their orbits to focus on us.